Ahoy there, I'm Captain Chris. I'm not a real captain, but I am going to give you 20 tips and hacks about the MSC cruise ship Virtuosa. And almost all of them will also apply to Virtuosa's sister ships, Meraviglia, Bellissima, Grandiosa and Arvia. But it's Virtuosa I'm talking about specifically. And stay tuned until the end because my favourite tip of all is coming up near the end, so make sure you stick around for that one. We'll start at the beginning, in fact before the beginning, because there are some things you should consider doing before you even leave home. If you've got kids, register them for the kids clubs to avoid disappointment. There's a baby club for kids up to 3 years old, mini club for age 3 to 6, junior club is for age 7 to 11, young club covers age 12 to 14 and the teen club is for 15 to 17 year olds. Tip number 2 is about embarkation day. Most people I've heard from have said that queuing for ages at the cruise terminal in Southampton is pretty standard. When we went, we queued for a good hour and it was a chilly morning in springtime. It was long and tedious and chilly, so tip number 2 is dress for the weather on embarkation day. The next tip is about your kids. Kids are allowed to use their cruise cards to buy drinks, souvenirs and photos and play video games. It would be pretty easy for them to run up a hefty bill, but you can set a spending limit on their cards so you don't get a nasty shock at the end of your holiday. Kids are given ID wristbands to help reunite them with you if you become separated, but there's another type of wristband available on board too. You can have a wristband that works like your cruise card and use it to make purchases, open your cabin door, make bookings and so on. In fact, you can use it for anything except for leaving the ship. This is great because cruise cards can be easy to misplace and the wristbands are waterproof, so you can use them if you go swimming. If you've paid the yacht club fare, they're free, but they're charged for everyone else, but they're only a few pounds, so they're worth considering. Incidentally, if you don't want to buy a wristband, it might be helpful to know that your cruise card has a hole punched in it. So you could attach it to a lanyard if you wanted to bring one of those. Number 5 now, and you should register your credit card details before you leave home, which is used to settle your onboard account. But if you don't, there are terminals around the ship which you can use for this purpose once you're on board. You might also find it useful to know that you can use cash to add credit to your onboard account, and you might find that easier if you need to stick to a budget. And you can do that at these terminals too. To your cabin now and choosing a good location. If you pay the Fantastica fare or above, you can choose which cabin you have rather than having one allocated to you. If you're travelling with children, it's worth knowing that most of the entertainment for kids is on the high decks 15 and above, and the buffets up there too. So choosing a cabin up high will cut down on your journey time to and from your room. This might not sound like much, but Virtuosa is huge, so it can take quite a while to travel through it. Equally for those without kids, most of the theatres, bars, restaurants, lounges and the casino are on the lower decks, 5, 6 and 7, so cabins on the lower decks may suit you better. But beware the party nights on deck 6. We could just about hear the music from our cabin on deck 9, so think about what matters most to you and choose accordingly, or take some earplugs. Once you're in your cabin, you'll find plenty of storage space, and don't forget there's a lot of space under the beds. You'll easily get your suitcases under there and a pushchair too if you're travelling with one of those. The walls are metal, so some people take magnetic hooks or storage solutions that hook over the door. Just be careful not to cause any damage to the walls though, as you may be charged. The electric sockets are the European type, so you'll need a travel adapter, and there are USB sockets under the bedside lamps, which can be tricky to spot, so you can give your phone a charge while you're having a late night scroll. If you've paid the Bella or Fantastica fare, you can eat in the main restaurants or the buffet. If you dine in the restaurants, you dine at the same time and on the same table every night, and that information is printed on your cruise card, and quite often you'll be sharing a larger table with people from other cabins. If you really want to change your dining time, or maybe request the table to yourself, you can go to the Blue Danube restaurant on deck 5 and ask them there. They'll help you if they can, but it's not guaranteed, so it needs to be the first thing you do once you're on board on the first day. We had a table for 2, but it was literally 4 inches away from the next table, so you might think a table for 2 brings you privacy, but it doesn't really. One thing that is useful to know though is this. Everyone has a table in the restaurant allocated to them, but the buffet is really popular, so lots of people never use their allocated restaurant table, or do so only occasionally. 15 minutes after the time slot, those unused tables are up for grabs, so if you go to the restaurant 15 minutes late, you can ask if there are any tables available, and you might be able to get a table for 2 or a better time slot than the one you've been given. The dining times for each of the 4 restaurants are in the daily planner, but if you do use the buffet, I thought it was the best cruise ship buffet I've experienced, so I recommend it very highly. All the pizza, pasta and mozzarella are made on board freshly each day, as are all the lovely breads like focaccia and so on. There's an ice machine here too to add to your drinks, and remember the tea and coffee are free, and although it said that the juices were only available at breakfast time, I saw them at other times too, so it's always worth having a look, and there's a bar here for your paid for drinks. Now, I mentioned the daily programme earlier. These contain all the day's entertainment and activities, as well as information about the restaurant's opening times and plenty more. On some cruise lines you get one of these delivered to your cabin each day, but not with MSC. All this information is on the app, but if you want a paper copy you need to ask at reception. I asked if they'd send one to my cabin each day and they said they would, but they didn't, so ask for one at reception each day if you'd rather use this than the app. Once you know what the day's entertainment is, you might want to book a seat in the theatre for the shows you really want to see. This can be done on the app or on screens dotted around the ship. The popular ones got fully booked, so it's worth reserving your seats, and the shows are repeated 3 times a night, so you can fit them in around your evening meal. If you haven't booked, you can queue up at the theatre, and a few minutes before the show starts you'll be allowed in if there are any seats still available, but book if it's a show you really don't want to miss. If you're travelling without kids, you may not want to be surrounded by other people's kids, and there are options available to you for that. The Sky Lounge on deck 18 is for adults only, and it's a lovely room with windows all around. If you've paid the Arvia fare, there's a sun deck area on deck 19 that's exclusively for you, and paying for the yacht club gives you exclusive access to a lounge, bar, restaurant and sun deck of your own. Although families with kids can choose to pay the Arvia or yacht club fare, they tend not to, so there are usually fewer kids in those areas. Actually, we found that the places we wanted to be, like the formal restaurants, theatres and lounges with quizzes and games, were not the places families with kids wanted to be. They were splashing around in the water or in the sportplex or kids clubs, and they tended to use the less formal buffet for meals, so we kind of naturally kept apart. The Galleria Virtuosa is a long street with shops, bars and restaurants, and above it is this wonderful LED ceiling. At 7:45 and 9:15 each evening there's a spectacular dome show here, which is timed to coincide with the end of the theatre shows. So if you're watching a theatre show, make sure you get yourself out of the theatre promptly at the end so you won't miss the dome show. Tip number 16 is really important. Don't miss the boat. If you go ashore and explore the port independently and you're late getting back, the ship will leave without you. The all aboard time is in the daily programme on port days. Remember it. Take a photo of it on your phone. Remember to allow for any changes of time if you're travelling to a destination in a different time zone to where you set off from, and look for the phone number of the port agent, which is also in the daily programme. If you even begin to think you might be late, call them and tell them your predicament. They might be able to help, but generally the all aboard time is not flexible, so don't be late. MSC cruises tend to have fairly low headline prices compared with other cruise lines, so they're great for cruising on a budget. Some people choose to only drink the inclusive drinks on board to avoid running up a large drinks bill, so it's worth knowing that you can have bottled water for free in the main restaurants, not just the buffet. Now we come to my favourite tip of all, and that's because I haven't read or heard it anywhere else, so this tip is, I think, exclusively here. The corridors on cruise ships are really long. They feel like they go on forever. Apart from the glass lift, there are two main lobbies where there are lifts and stairs, but it always seems like you take the lift or stairs to the deck where your cabin is, only to find that you're at the opposite end of the ship to where you want to be, and you've got a really long, despondent trudge along the corridors to get to your room. If only there was a way to tell the lift and stair lobbies apart, so you'd know which was the best one to use to pop you out closest to your cabin. Well, you can tell them apart. The back of the ship is square and the front is rounded, and in the lift lobbies and staircases, the pattern on the carpet is square or round as well. All you need to do is remember whether your cabin is nearer the front or the back of the ship, and then head to the square or round lobby to find yourself nearest to your room. Just a couple more tips to go now, including one about the drinks packages. Before I get to that, could I please ask, if you found this video at all useful or interesting, would you please hit the subscribe button and allow notifications? Subscribing doesn't cost you anything, it simply means you'll be notified when I post another video, and it shows me that you've enjoyed this one, which means a lot to me, so please subscribe. Thank you. Tip 19 is to book in advance anything that you have to pay for, because everything is dearer once you get on board. You can buy a pass for the Sportplex so your kids or you can use all the games and facilities there. There are deals for the specialty restaurants and plenty more. We booked a show called Alchemia in the Carousel Lounge in advance, and it was only £9, and that included a cocktail, which we thought was a bargain, and we loved the show. And that brings me on to the drinks. I thought the drinks on board Virtuosa were pretty pricey, with almost no alcoholic drinks costing less than £8. This makes the drinks packages seem quite appealing, but again the price of those goes up by about 15% if you don't buy before you travel. So if you are buying one, you should definitely buy it in advance of your holiday. If you're considering buying a drinks package, you'll want to know which one to go for and whether a package would be right for you, or whether you'd be better off paying as you go along. And to help you decide, I've made a video dedicated to that topic, and as you can see, there's a link to that for you to click on down here. That's all for this time, so until next time, thanks for watching.